The last time Bitcoin flashed this signal, it catalyzed a 95% move.
Let me into my zone. Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. 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 Please don't.
Well. Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. It's a lovely Friday morning over here from a very bright and sunny Helsinki, Finland. It's been bright and sunny ever since fucking 3:30 a.m. It keeps on getting less and less, man. Blackout curtains couldn't come sooner. Anyways, there's plenty to talk about today. I want to follow up on yesterday's analysis. Yes, we did hit the short-term time frame target, which actually then transferred into more of a medium and higher-term time frame target. And now we have plenty to discuss with the next trajectory. But before we actually get into it, I want to do something very organic right now. And I wanted to ask, before viewing any of the rest of this video, if you do have an opinion on price action, I'm very curious to know in the comment section below. Maybe I'll start a little bit of a thread, but I want to know, without viewing any of the rest of this, what's your opinion on is this move just getting started, or is it just getting finished? Because there's actually a lot to discuss with regards to that. And even though Bitcoin has had a pretty momentous move thus far, there's some interesting things going on these charts right now. Anyways, with all that said, I will very unlikely be on Twitch today, and I do want to apologize for not being on Twitch yesterday. As you can guess, it was equipment malfunction all fucking day, all fucking night. It's very frustrating for myself, but just trying to do the best that I can here. As at the end of the day, I'm basically going to resolve to just buy another computer and make sure that it gets taken care of that way. So that's going to be my next mission for this weekend, so I don't have to deal with that again. But for right now, it looks like I'm going to have to take some time off from that so that I can make sure that the setup is nice and solid for the future, and we won't have those fucking issues anymore, which I think are just so frustrating. Anyways, we're looking at the Krown trading application over here, and it can be found at app.crowntrading.net. It's free. Go take advantage of it. The open interest of very much interest right now. We're seeing that major move up from what was once 700 million on the precipice of a breakout last week. Now that next 150 million plus being added, which really does tie into the higher term time frame analysis and is going to well round everything that we're looking at right now. So as always, keep that in the back of your mind's eye. We're seeing that confirm the next phase as we were kind of looking for. And more importantly, or just as important, we see the Bitcoin dominance heading up to 68%. I'm still bullish on this. We've been bullish on this since like 62 or 63, and I do think that is still headed up towards 70 and probably 70 plus. So alts versus Satoshis very likely to get boo caked on, but versus US dollar, if Bitcoin continues to the upside here, they very likely do well versus US dollar. So we'll be looking at that as well. And the crypto fear and greed index above 50 for the first time in like 2 months now. So we are officially in the neutral zone, so to speak, and technically not even greedy right now, even after Bitcoin more than doubling off the lows. So this really is feeling like climbing the wall of worry, and there's a lot to say about that as well. Oh, also, before we get into it, I want to massively suggest go check out Whale Pool. I don't know if they know that I exist or anything like that, but I've been a big fan of them since, like, I don't know, 2016 or 2017, and especially this last chat that they put up. They spoke with Richard Hart from Hex, because that's kind of like a really popular thing right now, and the main guy there, Flipper, he's great. He's fucking awesome, and he and he was having a discussion with Richard Hart about Hex, and you know, some of the guys, they were just trying to tear Richard Hart down without really giving him too much of a chance. But Flipper was incredibly smart with it, because he was giving him a chance to speak, and then he'd say, like, if it was like a fair assessment in his own words, he'd be like, yeah, that makes sense, that's fine. But it really meant something when he pushed back on a statement, and I thought that was really enlightening for someone like me who doesn't necessarily understand the technology of those more fringe altcoins and whatnot. And doesn't really care to either, but to see them go back and forth was really eye-opening. So I definitely suggest go checking that out if if that sort of thing interests you. And massive shout out for that, because it was very, 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 very helpful for someone like me, again, who's my main focus is on technical analysis, not on understanding coding, which is just I imagine you got to spend your whole life learning that kind of thing, because just looking at it from what I know is it's like dubstep going off in my brain is what it sounds like, but like a bad version. Anyways, let's go check out Bitcoin price analysis over here. Bitcoin having a phenomenal daily doll to close, not only a daily doll to close, but a 2-day doll to close as well. And to follow up from the opening statement from this video, the signal that we've been seeing before that actually transacted another 95% move after it was given was back on over here on the 2-day golden cross, going from a death cross to a golden cross as it typically does. And we see Bitcoin from the next major low go all the way from about 7,400 to about 14,000. So just under 100% move right there. Pretty damn good. And what do you know, Bitcoin kind of showing the similar signs over here. So I want to first parlay this by saying I do think that Bitcoin actually is going to play out a nice little pullback, probably over the weekend or something like that. But overall, things are shaping up for a pretty momentous weekly close potentially. So with regards to what we saw yesterday, let's kind of follow it from yesterday's short-term analysis. We said that this was kind of operating as, do you want to call it a cup and handle? Do you want to call it an ascending triangle? It's a bullish reaccumulation formation. At the end of the day, don't really care what you call it. At the end of the day, support and resistance going to get it more or less. And we did hit the upside target, even exceeded the upside target, all the way up to at the height of it, a little bit over 10,085 and a half on Mexico right there. And as you can see right here, it is actually coming back down and testing around these regions to test former resistance as support, which is rather healthy. And I do think that we will probably come back down and test around this blue box, maybe even over the weekend, somewhere right around 9,500. But here is the crux of my message today, or at least that sounds arrogant as fuck. What I'm trying to say is here's essentially what I'm focusing on. As long as Bitcoin is above 9,500 on even a 4-hour dildo closure, I am more or less bullish, and this to me, it looks like it's melting up right now. Is the halving hype real? It looks so. Is it Paul Tudor Jones? Maybe that's it as well. At the end of the day, man, it doesn't matter which narrative you spin for this. The charts are looking like continuation. At the end of the day, an uptrend is an uptrend, and the trend is your friend until the end of the trend. Now, funnily enough, the daily is actually not golden crossed, whereas the 2-day has. But I do put more weight on the 2-day, especially for Bitcoin spot price action. And we'll probably see the daily on CMEs in that same sort of posturing. And more or less we do. We see the daily golden cross on its way. It will naturally get it sooner rather than later, as long as Bitcoin remains above 81, 8,200. Of course, we've all seen crazier things than that, happen. But at the end of the day, I would say within, at the most, 2 days, we will see an official golden cross on CMEs. Now, keep in mind, CMEs do close for the weekly today at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So let's go look at the weekly for this, because it's going to give us a good insight into what likely the spot price action closes on Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I would say there is one major consideration that could make me incredibly bullish for another, $2,000 move up, or about $2,000 move up to 11.5 or 12,000-ish region. And that would be is if this weekly closes above our last macro high, which is on a closing basis right here, right around about 10,500, almost on the dot. Now there is about a little bit over $100 price premium on spot price action for CME futures right now. So that would be spot price above 10.4 over the weekend. Now, of course, spot price in general actually has a much more preferable last macro high if you are looking for that next bout of continuation at about 10,150, but that won't be confirmed until Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's one or the other. If, whichever one closes above first, or even just takes out the last wick high, that makes me bullish for, at the very least, a move on spot to about 11.5, and on CMEs probably 12,000 ish region, which is probably also one of the last major gaps. Yeah, coming in right around here, 11.8, 11.9 region. So yeah, aligning with that pretty damn well. But again, that's only concerned with the weekly close. So let's go back down to the lower term timeframes and kind of document this out a little bit better, where right now it's actually really not the best time to be using these lower term timeframes. And what we can do here to kind of aggressively get this a little bit better, as I do think it's appropriate to be a little bit more right now, is as long as we are above this blue box right here, this last little breakout that we saw, I am more or less bullish. Now, could we come back down and test around 94 or 9,500? Yeah, absolutely. I don't see any major glaring issues with that. I look at that as likely an opportunity, as it would even be just holding an uptrend on a lower time frame like a 4-hour. But at the end of the day, volume, open interest, and volatility all following through with each other. And as we said yesterday with the 12-hour historical volatility percentile, that was a damn good insight that this move is not necessarily done just yet. And historically speaking, we should expect more There's going to be an ebb and flow, of course. I don't want to make it sound like it's just going to be a fucking rocket to the goddamn moon. But with those critical places in mind on the higher term timeframes, I would say that plays off pretty damn nicely with what we're looking at on the lower term timeframes as well. So let's go back actually to the 4 hour. I don't want to stop right here. I do think that we're probably going to be setting up for a short term pullback relatively soon. I want to see some sort of divergence being marked off on at the very least a 4 hour for a short term move back down to the 21, wherever that's going to end up being. But as it is right now, it technically is actually putting in some bearish divergence. We do have a local high confirmed here, it looks like. However, do I think that one plays out? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to spend a little bit of time consolidating this area first. It looks rather strong, and usually when you do get bearish divergence, it doesn't come in like this. Although technically speaking, if you are identifying that as bearish divergence, it is correct. And at this point, would it come back down to 94, 9,500? Give a nice quick spike there. Yeah, I do think so. If that were to play out, but I'm actually not looking for that to play out right now. I think that we're going to get one more drive higher, then put in some divergence, and then we'll play out a nice pullback. And if that happens over the weekend, that actually probably be the best time for that. Looking at the 2 hour, same thing here. We see all momentum oscillators, going to be printing divergences. Yes, absolutely. But I think one more drive, perhaps. We do see that momentum oscillators like Stokes also showing the same sort of thing. We see a bifurcation actually between most of them. Hourly is headed down, as you'd imagine. And we do have a nice trend line coming in right at the neutral zone. So if we did come down a little bit more, I would be looking for a bounce off that. Bi hourly is going to be crossing down from a very high area. Let's see if the rest kind of line up with that. 3 hour there as well, actually. And do we have a trend line here? No, we do not. 4 hour, same thing as well. So actually, this is lining up with a little bit more of a pullback narrative here. So let's see what a momentum oscillator perspective would suggest for keeping the upwards momentum, in the same direction for like the more immediate time frames. And for the 4 hour, in order to cross this baby back up, need to stay above 98.72 on the next closure in 1 hour and 57 minutes and 33 seconds. On a 3 hourly, we do see about 99.69. Great number. Let me just make sure that I'm recording. I am recording, and the microphone seems to be working as well, so it's good. And bi hourly, 10,000 even. And single hourly, 10,035 and a half. So yeah, perhaps I will be wrong on that. But a little bit of sideways here would be okay. Mostly, I do want to stay away from really charting out these lower term timeframes right now, other than what I've already done, just because right now it's the higher term timeframes that are taking over. And realistically, looking at the daily right here, you can kind of just eyeball it out. 9,500 very easily could be retested, but I'd be looking for another, another local low to be put in there. Very, 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 very likely. At the very least, for a short-term bounce. Perhaps it does. Perhaps it does call into question after that. But I think the very obvious thing right now is just as long as Bitcoin maintains 4 hour dildo closures above, especially 9,400, but even 9,500 is good enough in my opinion. Trend is still your friend, and it's still to the upside. Momentum is still to the upside as well on the higher term timeframes, which is more important. Going over here to our medium term timeframes, like the 12 hour Stokes, which are the fucking cheat code from heaven, I guess, as it's been working. Like, listen, you can listen to all the TA in the world, but if I were to just trade the 12 hour Stokes for the last 2 years with these inputs, I think I might have been probably more profitable than my regular spot trading with just all the other tools that I use. Just using that blindly probably would have been better. Now, when we add in options to that, that changes the dynamic, of course. But for right now, still pointing north. And of course, we got the golden cross on that about a few days ago on the 3rd of May, which, as we've seen long term, just like the 2-day cross does typically hold a lot of weight. Last time that we saw a major golden cross on this time frame, it was not the best timer for an entry, but as far as momentum goes, absolutely phenomenal. Bitcoin does come back down and test around the 55, and then sets up for about a 30% move to the upside to the tune of about $2,500, which, quite nice there. Quite nice. And before that, we have the whole switch up from bear market to bull market in 2019. Right around here, Bitcoin gets that first initial green dildo to the goddamn moon, and maybe not so much the moon, but to the heavens perhaps. Or which one's higher? I don't know. Probably the heavens. That's a good question. That's a good philosophical question. Anyways, Bitcoin comes back down to the 55 in this one as well, reaccumulates, and then boom, it sets up for, after that last test, a nice 180% move to the upside after that. And then of course we can go back to 2018 as well, same sort of thing. So I'll let you backtest it yourself if you would like to prove it to yourself. Okay, so more importantly, at some point in time, I do think that Bitcoin will get a pretty aggressive downside move and test around the 55. But for right now, let the trend be your friend, at least in my opinion. Of course, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and the 12-hour RSI will be putting in some divergence at some point. But is it making it here? Well, I'm sure everyone's going to be yelling about this. No, absolutely not. It's not confirmed as a local high as it is. If it were to top out here, put in some sort of reversal dildo formation, and then have continuation on top of that, then yeah, it would play like that, and that'd probably be the next move down to like 94, 95. Of which I do think you'd bounce there, and then we'd have something new to look at. But at the end of the day, this is continuation as it is. And when people look at, something like this as, oh my God, bearish divergence down to 0. Well, you're going to call every piece of continuation ever in all trading assets or all trending assets as divergence and take a trade on the wrong side, and that's not the color dildo that you want to wake up in the morning to. Looking at the daily right here, just going off our last marking off our last macro high right here, we do see 10.4 to 10.5 is again of interest. So as long as Bitcoin is below there on the macro, there's not another major move to be had, but we are talking of a range here between about 9,900 right now, or even as far down as like 9,500 to about 10.5 is how I see it on the medium and higher term timeframes. Above 10.5, and this is really, 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 really important. And I should say this in a more pulled back tone, but above 10.5, I do think that Bitcoin is going to melt up to the 11.5, 12,000 ish region relatively fast. Maybe it doesn't happen all in the same day, but I do think that Bitcoin just has kind of free enterprise up to those levels. Looking at it from a volume profile perspective, Bitcoin has. Yeah, you can see the 10.5 level here is the next major one that it has to deal with. And then above there, it kind of becomes a vacuum once again, all the way up to about 11.5, 12,000. And then that's where the macro weekly area is, again, going back on over here. So it is actually kind of relevant to talk about these higher timeframes right now, just because we are damn close. And again, to, really the focus that I'd have right now, keeping in mind that the weekly for CME is closing today, and then the weekly for spot closing on Sunday, is does Bitcoin close on a new macro high anywhere above 10,150 on spot price action does that, and as we looked at on CMEs, that the same level would be about 10.4. Anywhere above there, I would be looking for another $2,000 move ish. Or sorry, at least, sorry, no, a $1,000 move to $1,500 move, at the very least up to 11.5. That's where the macro really starts to change around. Again, looking at it from a volume profile perspective, you can see that there is absolutely nothing doing above that level, which suggests that if you think Bitcoin's volatile right now, it's going to be about 2 tiers higher volatility in this region right here. And realistically, the second that we get a close above 11.5 or 12,000, if you want to be more conservative, I do think that Bitcoin really just, it's at that point, the real trading bias that I'd have as far as what I'll be doing is just, I want to be a buyer, and I'm generally looking at 16,000 as the next major area, and then 20,000 realistically. So I'll leave that for a long-term analysis video perhaps to get more deep into, but we can all see that this area is very, 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 very important from a long-term perspective as well, just for the simple fact that this is where Bitcoin's been getting rejected from and putting in its macro highs ever since Jan 2018 right here, twice in February 2018 right there, in July 2019 and August 2019 more recently. So if it does clear those levels, well, I would be looking for immense follow through on top of that. But again, that's well and far away from right now. Let's go back to the lower term timeframes and kind of focus on them a little bit more. I do feel like the lower term timeframes are showing a little bit of lost momentum here. But again, I really want to see at the very least some divergence on no less than a 2 hour, for God's sakes, but preferably a 4 hour. And yes, it technically is in there right now. Does it come back down really quick to like 95-ish region? It certainly does have a chance right here. Also, volume profile in the shorter term timeframes showing about the same thing. So I would say that, I want to come up with a more directed way of doing this, but I do have to stay true to my style in the sense that I wouldn't just blindly call something without some sort of confirmations. And you know what? Below the last spike low that we see on a 4-hour before this continuation dildo at 97.50, we'll call it, you know, I could probably use that as a nice gatekeeper for another $250, $300 move to the south side, somewhere down around the 4-hour 21 exponential moving average, wherever kind of aligns for that. But I wouldn't get too aggressive with something like this. You know, at the end of the day, the momentum, the higher time frames are very obviously directed towards the upside. The biggest contingency that I have in the back of my mind is that, you know, is this going to be a sell the news event for the past, you know, for the past halvings? Well, we can actually look at that data as we do have it, of course. Let me get rid of this. Let's put on the hash ribbons, as that will actually tell me when the last, when the last two halvings were. And we'll do something like this. Okay, cool. And let's pull her back out. When in doubt, pull it out, as they say. And maybe go to a weekly, maybe go to log as well, so we can get a good bird's eye view. Okay, cool. So here was the last halving, right around 11th of July 2016. And what happened during that time? Well, halving happens right here. So you do see that Bitcoin rallies into it rather aggressively, actually. It's already in a macro uptrend, to be fair, so that, you know, that should be documented, but also, you know, 85% move from your last test of the 21 to your next major high. The halving happens right here, actually. And actually right after that, that is, you know, actually after your next major high, and we do come down pretty aggressively here, 33.33% to the 55, as you can see. So of course, you know, does it continue onwards and upwards to the upside after that? Yeah, absolutely. But it does produce an initial sell-off. It was a sell the news event. Let's go to the one before that, back on over here. And what do we see? Relatively similar on a weekly schedule, relatively similar. Again, Bitcoin was already in a weekly uptrend, which it is technically not in right now, although the weekly still is yet to close, so it is going to have a chance. But fair enough. This one was in a more long-term uptrend already, and halving happens right here. High is put in 1 week after the halving, and then comes down. It doesn't look like much here, but let's actually measure this one out, because when we do zero in on this, it is a little bit more. I think it was this area right here. So that's 27% move. Hold on. No. I apologize. That was wrong. It is this area right here. So it's going to be less than that for sure. But let's see exactly how much it was. So next high is put in right here. We come back down a little bit. That's not so bad. You know, it looks very minuscule here, but technically speaking, it is about an 11% move. So it is tradable. And we basically have a history of both times right after the halving, you know, within a week or two. Bitcoin does like to play a little bit of a downside move. So, you know, realistically, the next macro sort of areas that I have to be looking at are going to be very much determined by this current weekly close, or perhaps next week's weekly close. You know, depending on whether Bitcoin trades above this last macro high or not is going to really drive where I look for the next macro low to be put in. As you know, the second that Bitcoin either prints above 10,500 even or closes this weekly dildo above 10,150 on spot, we do have, well, one piece of an uptrend. We have a higher high. At some point, Bitcoin will come back down and set in a higher low when everyone's going to hold their breath during that time, myself included. But overall, it's one thing before the next, and we just have to kind of wait for that one to get there before we really go a little bit deeper into it. Anyways, while we are here on the weekly, I should also discuss this. This is also going to have a major chance to do its business this week as well. So we've been looking at this. What do you want to call this? Do you want to call this a falling wedge? Well, I'd say it's more of a falling wedge than anything else. We do have a falling wedge right here, and Bitcoin's gonna have a chance to actually break it to the upside on this week's closure, right? Like later today, again, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Any sort of a closure. Now, here's a little bit of a problem. I don't have a tool that tells me what price it would have to close above in order to maintain it above here. Although I'm sure that you could do it if Bali's listening, and perhaps a future project when you're free. But interesting nonetheless, as you know, it would tell you essentially where price action needs to close in order to maintain above this broken trend line. I'd imagine it's 9,500. I would imagine it's 9,500. If I had to guess, just, you know, using very bad mental maths, I would think somewhere around 93 to 9,500 will confirm that, and that will confirm that as a breakout to the upside. Can you make a measured move with falling wedges or patterns on RSI? I don't think so. At least I haven't really seen it play out in like a dependable way that I'd feel comfortable trading on. But I would say at the very least we'd get into the bullish control zone, you know, somewhere around the 70 to 80ish marker, and then come back and reassess from there. But But as you can see, this pattern's been baking in for about almost a year now, since June of 2019. So I do put quite a bit of weight on this. I put a lot more weight on the wedge formations in RSI than I do on spot price action for cryptocurrencies, not for other assets. But they do seem to work pretty damn well, historically speaking, for for the wedges in RSI, again, for Bitcoin. Again, other assets a little bit different, but this one nonetheless also very interesting here, just because the weekly is going to have a chance to break above the 886 Fibonacci retracement right here, which actually we should elongate this to the last major high, to the last major low. There we go. Yeah, we're actually going to have a chance to blast above and close above the 618 on this weekly, which is basically 9,900 on spot price action, the same area I have at, where is it? Oh, much lower, actually, about 95.50. So very interesting. Very interesting. But both are going to have a damn good chance to close above it on this next weekly closure. I'd say that also very likely at least line for a test of our last macro high right here at 10.5. Again, personally speaking, I do feel like it probably does break above. We're seeing a lot of major moving averages switch around to a bullish posturing. 21 exponential moving average and the 55 both have positive slopes here. We're about to cross that to the upside. If you're in the TA program, keep an eye on that one, because that is pretty much what we were looking for this week to really confirm another extension to the upside. And I do believe that this is a pretty important one right here. Again, same thing as kind of the 2-day dildo death cross into golden cross. Whenever you see a quick in and out like this, like it snakes around, that's a clear and obvious signal that the market's baiting, or the market moves are baiting people into bad positions before running it the other way. And the way that the 21 has such a positive slope compared to the 55 right there, it's looking like I won't finish that sentence. It's not the right thing to be saying as a trader. But it's looking good is what I'll say. It's looking good. Again, momentum oscillators on the weekly are also pointed north as well. Yes, we do have a trend line potentially forming right here, but that does leave a little bit of airtime within the space, and we are kind of baking on this ascending triangle going over the long period of time all the way back to February of 2019. So more than a year-long pattern in the making here, doing something like this. Does it find really the question that I have right now is, does it find a local high at 10.5, or do we get to 11.5 first? I think that there's probably going to be another drive higher, and if we go anywhere above 10.5, this last local high right here, I would be targeting 11.5, extremely likely, relatively quickly as well. Things are looking okay. Things are not just looking okay; they're looking more or less good. Weekly Jewel is still giving you a hodl to the long signal, so I like that. Giving you a very aggressive bounce off that. I think it was maybe even better seen on CMEs, or something was. Something was. I forget exactly what it was. So overall, I want to see maybe on the lower time frames. Is there anything lining up for a sell signal? Maybe. Hey, could you populate your goddamn indicator, sir? Also, I guess we could take him. Oh, nope, there it is. Nope, continuation, even giving you another halt of your long signal right there. If you're like super aggressive, same thing with 3 hour, 2 hour, hourly. They are going to all line up for sell signals at some point, but it's going to take longer now. Okay, cool. So basically, the lower term timeframes, I don't really have a super strong bias here. Do we get another move back down to 9,500 before trying another leg of continuation of the upside? I really don't have a strong opinion on that. I would say the most obvious way of getting that is if Bitcoin trades below this spike low on the it's just two dildos ago on the recording time for this video, which is 97.37 on Mexico. If that does happen, then yeah, I'd look for another move back down to like 9,500, test back down around there. Until that happens, though, does this just flag out at a high level? I don't have an opinion on that. My opinion is on the macro areas now. That is where the focus is on, because we're looking at big pieces of price action still. And remember, with the 12-hour historical volatility percentile, as I said, we are still expanding here. Yesterday, it was kind of died down a little bit, but remember, it's the moving average on this that actually gives you the right read for the longer term move. And with a positive slope being maintained on this, it was just, I shouldn't say it's just a matter of time, but this is one of the most dependable indicators for some like that, as we do get another spike up in volatility. Price action following through to the upside on top of that. Most major movement averages on pretty much all higher time frames moving in on top of that. Open interest also further confirming the move, and now we're even close to 900 million, and then it's only 100 million away from $1 billion, and that's probably going to, maybe somewhere a little bit above $1 billion. We find another local top, but for right now, looks fine to me, realistically, all across the board, for a little bit more testing the upside, and then maybe we play out some down, and we'll come back in real time and analyze it like that. But for right now, is there any other things that I'm missing? Daily stocks getting way up there. They will remain up there as long as we are above 95.50. So I like that as a good pivot point. What about the 12-hour? 12-hour showing 96.50. So these can be used as good markers as well. Oh, and sorry, I forgot to even finish my thoughts on the historical volatility percentile right here. Anytime that we've had 2 months of contraction phase, it doesn't just lead up to like one splurt like we just saw right here. That's also what was kind of driving the bias of an upwards continuation yesterday into today. But most of my upside targets have been met right now. The next one, obviously 10.4 to 10.5. It's just generally moving in that direction right now. I don't really have too much to say about it other than that I am hodling long, for full disclosure. So I should, I think I should denote that as well. And I've been hodling long ever since 94 was broke, or 93 was broke to the upside. And I don't really have any plans to touch that, at least for the time being, if it is going to be more of a medium to long-term trade and very natural stop in profit at the levels that we spoke about earlier. But again, historically speaking, anytime that we've seen 2 months of contraction, going back to November 2018, this is what led up into the last major switch up from macro cycle bear to bull. This was a whole move down from 6,000 to 3,000 before flipping around to 14,000, and then same thing, a little bit later actually on this major high right here. So it works both ways, of course. This one going all the way from 10,000 to very quickly about 6,000, and then ultimately like 4,000, kind of crazy. And then same thing back on over here as well. And you're more than welcome to look at that yourself if you want to test, back test the prior results. But overall, my point is that whenever we get that sort of a read on a 12-hour historical volatility percentile, really expect multi-$1,000 moves. So this first $1,000 move right here was great, but I do expect more continuation on top of that in the medium and long term. Short term, again, this one can ebb and flow. But let's talk about short term continuation. I really haven't done a good job of talking about that. This one's more difficult because I don't think that just taking out this prior high right here is good enough. It's really, would that get it? Generally, it would. And then the next short-term target, I guess, going off the 12-hour right here, we have a pretty natural area coming in right here. Or do I already have this marked off? Yeah, more or less, something like this, anywhere between about 10,350 to 10,400, and I'll mark that off with another blue box. So if Bitcoin does head up around there, that's where I'd be looking for another short-term high to be put in before a nice little pullback. That also perhaps even work for a good medium-term high as well, as we would be retesting the prior macro high. But any sort of a tick above 10.5 or in this case, on BitMexico, it's actually 10,550. On Stamp, it's 10,500 even. And either one probably does this, although I do trust Stamp a little bit more. I'd be looking for I'd immediately look for a continuation, another $500 to about 11,000 and ultimately 11,500 at the very least. Again, I should really back away from using more direct words like that, but I would feel quite confident in that, because it's just the macro changing around and really confirming macro reversals here. Okay, so let's go look at traditional markets. I'm going to guess that they're definitely going down right now because Bitcoin's a great hedge against all this bullshit that's going on in the world, right? With printing all that money, the burr. I've been listening to Ivan on Tech. I've been listening to all the crypto Twitters, and they said Bitcoin's the hedge. What the fuck? There's even a bigger uptrend in Nas futures. Wait, but that's not it. It's about SPY, right? Fuck off! Oh, bitch! Oh, fuck! Motherfucker. Not again. So Hedgecoin, definitely not correlated with the traditional markets. Very big day for Nas futures. As we said yesterday was likely. I still remain with my targets, 94.50ish region. I think that we're gunning for this gap over here. Golden cross moving average is getting more and more divergence away from each other. So this is strengthening to the upside. We took out the last macro high. It looks good, and what do you know? They're moving fucking together. It's great. And I remain bullish on this as long as it is above on a 4-hour closing basis. Even on like an hourly closing basis, probably does it as well. As long as it's on an hourly closing basis above about 9,050. If you want to use 9,100, I think that works equally as fine. Overall, is it going to pull back a little bit here? Yeah, it's looking like it's losing a little bit of short-term momentum. Yeah. So I would expect to pull back relatively soon, if not sooner rather than later. But overall, looking for continuation in the next week or two up to that 94.50-ish region, at which point I would expect like a more medium-term pullback. Weekly is going to have a chance to close absolutely phenomenally. We've taken out last week's high. This is continuation. This is reaccumulation on the yellow 21 on the weekly. I'm not ever bearish on anything that's rallying off of a 21 exponential moving average on the weekly that is also maintaining a positive slope. I like all of that. It all looks good, sir. It all looks good. And as I've been saying, I really do feel like the traditional markets have bottomed out. I feel more and more confident with that each and every day. And I don't know, going back about 2 months ago now, I do think that essentially remains, or sorry, a month and a half ago, I guess now. I do think that remains, if things were to turn back down, I think a critical point for Nas futures is going to be about 80.50. And then we could talk about a return back down to like low 7,000s. But overall, this one's melting up as well. I mean, it's just as strong as Bitcoin right now, or, I mean, it's actually even a little bit more constructive than Bitcoin. Looking at daily momentum oscillators, we're protecting the bullish controls and crossing back up again as we make new highs. On top of that, daily RSI is actually a little more healthy than Bitcoin as well, just because you can see a nice consolidation here right at the edge of the bullish control zone. Typically, that's getting ready to break into the bullish control zone and stay in there. Whereas, Bitcoin's very, very strong as well. But to put it in perspective, we very likely will almost inevitably will be making bullish divergence on another high. So if Bitcoin does take another leg up here, I would really start to consider ideas of putting in bearish divergence on the on the daily, which is going to produce, or extremely likely to produce, I should say, a nice big move down, probably wherever the 21 is at that time, which is traveling up very aggressively right now, I should say. And of course, the daily will golden cross relatively soon as well. Going back to SPY futures, what do we see here? What are the critical levels as they stand right now? I do believe I said yesterday I'd be looking for a move back up to 29.50. We haven't gotten that just yet, but I do feel quite confident on that. Looking at NAS futures, I remain bullish on this one long term, as long as it remains above this last macro high, last macro low right here at 27.71, and if we can take out the last high at about 29.65 region, I would be looking for extension to a little bit past 310 to 313, and potentially another high being put in there for the short and medium term time frames, and then we'll come back and analyze it. I think that E-mini futures for SPY are going to fall through alongside NASDAQ. World markets are strong actually across the board, it looks like. Japan up 2.5%, following following the strength of the rest of the markets. Germany, DAX kind of following as well, not as strong, but also not open yet. I'd expect this one to pop back up towards like 11,100-ish region, and even India, which I'm keeping on my list for now. There's actually been multiple requests for this, which is kind of funny. I have no experience with Indian markets, so I want to say that at the outset, but I'd be looking for that one to pop back up towards 97.50 as well. This one certainly looks weak in comparison to the rest of the world markets, but strength in the general world market is good for all. Rising tide lifts all ships. So at the end of the day, I'm bullish on Bitcoin. I'm bullish on traditional markets for the medium and long term. For the short term, do we expect to pull back here and there? Yeah, I would just, I'm not so convinced that we're going to get it right here. I do think it's possible that we get another drive higher towards like the 10,300-ish region first, then put in some major divergences on some lower and medium and higher term timeframes by that point, all the way up to a daily, very, very likely. And then we can play out a nice downside move and scare the shit out of everyone, and everyone gets to hold their breath. That's likely what I'm thinking was going to happen. Oh my God, this video is already 37 minutes long. Jesus Christ, man. Let's go look at Mr. Bureau really quick. Not following through, but did get the golden cross. I'd be looking for this one to pop back up. Again, if Bitcoin takes another leg up, I'd be looking for this one to pop up to like 240, 244. Litecoin, Holy shit. Oh, this is Litecoin Bitcoin pairing. Ha ha! Boo cake party, baby. Mrs. Litecoin is hosting. Mrs. Litecoin looks like she actually wants to come down short term, probably to 45.86, and then hopefully bounce there if this is going to remain to the upside. I would still look for Bitcoin to provide direction, but weekly is absolutely atrocious for Mrs. Litecoin. That's a death cross in the making, and it will death cross on the next tick, assuming no weekly closure above, especially like 55 or 57. But again, Bitcoin's very likely to set the pace here. We'll go back to Bitcoin short terms. I will look at the let's define critical areas now. So I have 94 to 9,500 on even a lower term time frame closure, but even like a 12-hour or a daily is fine as well. Obviously going to be more confidence inducing, but as long as we remain above there, I do remain just overall bullish, even though I do think that we can very easily come back down to 95. I just don't have strong opinions on this right now. But where is a critical level for the upside? Well, I think naturally 10.5 is the area of interest right now. So let's go over here. Let's see what this is likely to produce at the end of the day. And we'll look at the target for the upper range. We can keep 10.5. And for the target for the lower range, we can do 9.5 even. So the lower side probability should be lower, you would think, but it's actually, should be higher because we are closer to it right now, as you would think, but it's actually not. It's actually not right now. The upside probability of even testing 10,500, even closing above, is 18.15%. That is actually decently high. That is within the bounds of even the first standard deviation. So that's pretty fucking good. That's pretty fucking good, actually. So definitely possible. I mean, I am saying that I do think that there's likely to be another drive of continuation here. So maybe, yeah. Looking at the rings on this, very obviously squeezing the upside. Is this going to be a melt up here? It very well could be. With using future bars as a probability marker, it obviously would bring the percentages down to about 10% for the upside and 27% for the downside. But again, as long as Bitcoin is just above 9,500, it needs to close below 9,500 before I really consider this like a failed rally, and we're going back down to 8,000, maybe 7,000, 6,000, something like that. It's just not really on my tongue right now. But you can see that the upside is even within the realm of possibilities right now. Let's just look at what would look like continuation on a short-term time frame. It's very difficult right here, very, very difficult right here, because if I see us take out the last spike high, does that immediately beget continuation? Probably does, but I just don't feel that confident on it. It's looking like Bitcoin wants to come back down here in the short term. Well, we can just look at it. If we do take out the high of this, we should get at least another $200 or $150 to $200 continuation up to the blue box of Destiny at about 10.3 to 10.4 region. So we can look at that. I think on Mexico it was 10,080 ish. So let's see what the probability of closing above there today is. Actually relatively high. And when I say relatively high, like super high. And that's even on future bars. Look at current, because that's what we really want to be concerned with. 44.65. 44.65. So, if that does get taken out, would I call another $150, $200 continuation up to the critical area right here? Yeah, I guess I could say that. But for right now, it looks like it actually is going to test out the downside. 9,500 is where I'd be looking towards. And probably a bounce there. Maybe a spike all the way down to the 21, wherever it ends up being on the time of approach. But I'd postulate between 9,500ish region is where I'd be looking towards. And as you can see from a probability standpoint right here, the upside is very much more likely, and from a slope analysis standpoint, incredibly likely. Well, at least to maintain that composure, at least for another day or two. So heading into the weekend, Bitcoin's gonna have a very strong chance to do some special things. To kind of wrap up my thoughts here and send you off, because this video is already 42 minutes too long for most people out there. And by the way, we're still expanding on historical volatility percentile on the daily as well, so that just elongates that signal even more. Any sort of a move above the last spike high, depending upon your exchange, around 10,500, I would look for another $500 to $1,000 continuation relatively soon to 11 and 11,500 respectively. Until that happens, though, if we do take out the last high right here at the time of this recording at 10,085, then I would look for extension another, 150 to 200 bucks higher towards the blue box. Or sorry, maybe it's more than that, like 10.3 to 10.4 region. But I'd still be looking for a short-term pullback there. But again, because today's daily is also going to be the weekly close for CMEs, any sort of a weekly close above 10.5, I'm very bullish in the weeks to come, and I'd be looking for a melt up phase after that, actually, for at least a little bit of time. Probably after the halving comes, we do get a nice a comeback down, but that'll likely be another opportunity for potentially another long-term position. This is of course not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and if the SEC is listening right now, go fuck yourself. But but I would say at 9,500 for the downside, 10.5 to the upside for the medium and high and macro timeframes, even especially to the upside. To the downside, more akin to the medium timeframes, and if we do break below 9,500 on a 4-hour total closing basis, or do you want to be more conservative than that? Yeah, I'd feel quite confident that we could maybe say 94 if you want to be super conservative. I would look for extension back down to the upper 8,000s, like 88 to 8,900 region, and then we'll come back and reassess after that. But for right now, looking, Bitcoin looking poised. So I'll shut it off here. I'm going to spend the rest of the day preparing to create another beast PC to make sure that can do streams all day and all night, and then a 24-hour stream preps to celebrate. Anyways, with that said, take care, and until next time.